Hello and welcome to another edition of Casablanca Chat with Chet. Chat with Chet. Chat with Chet. Chat with Chet. Great to see you. Well, see you virtually. I'm staring at a camera, but I'm imagining you on the other side of this camera. I hope your day's going well. Today's topic relates to shortcuts. And there's a ton of shortcuts in the latest version of the Bogart OS. As there have been in the last number of versions of Bogart OS and SmartEdit OS. If you're a person who worked a long time in the SmartEdit OS, the majority of our shortcuts came through something called PowerKey, which was add-on software that enabled keyboard shortcuts with your connected keyboard. Probably the first incarnation, maybe Bogart 2, Bogart 3, there were some additionals that started coming out. Even the last couple of SmartEdit, the things that allow you to group things together, and some of the functions just with buttons on screen allow you to do some shortcuts like grouping and the action button and the mark button in the edit menu. I believe are examples of shortcuts as well. Well, I wanted to give you a quick update with some of the shortcuts that I use most often that you may find friendly, and some of the ones that have changed that are no longer available in PowerKey with the Bogart OS, because you might be familiar with them. If you try to use them, you might get frustrated because they've changed. So let me show you kind of how to do the same thing or similar things with different shortcuts, okay? So you can see I fired up my system, and I'm using the Bogart 10 here on my Casablanca 4 Studio Pro, and I've gone to Edit menu. First thing I want to do is, let's say I want to clear the storyboard and start over. So what I can do is come down here to Mark, and we're going to mark all the scenes. Sorry, that's under Action. Mark the storyboard, okay? So every storyboard scene you see has this little rectangle on it. That means it's marked, identified, and now I can remove, and it's going to remove all marked. So it kind of cleans the storyboard, and I had an audio sample up there too. There's a couple audio samples. Now it's clean. The other thing I could have done is I could have gone over to Project, Delete, and just deleted the storyboard. But the trick is here, make sure you don't have these two highlighted, because if you do, you're erasing your project, pal. It's all gone in Clementine. Okay, so that's another way to clean your storyboard. So to me, this is a little bit more friendly. You could click remove, 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 but if you got, 60 or 140 clips up there, that's going to take a while. So you see that we've cleaned it out. The other thing is that's newer in Bogart 10 that I think we didn't used to have in SmartEdit, so they had to, the developers had to come up with something, is just the ability to drag and drop. So I can just come up here and drag it up there, right? So I can come up here, and I can drag this behind, and I can come up here and drag another clip right at the end of that one. So there's an ease of use with just dragging stuff like that. The other thing that we can do is if we mark scenes. So if I mark a bunch of different scenes here, and if I had my trackball with a tiny interior left button, I could just hover over it and click the tiny interior left button. By the way, these photos were captured on a small plane. About 2 years ago, my family and I had the good fortune to take a small plane up and circle around Mount Denali in Alaska, the tallest mountain in North America. So just truly amazing views, and the sky cleared for us, which is fairly rare. Anyway, so you can see I've marked a bunch of scenes. See the little horizontal, the little rectangle up there? So now if I add, it's going to say you would just want to add this one that's highlighted. No, I want to add all the marked ones. So I click all marked, and it adds them in the order they appear inside the storyboard. So not the order I click them, but the order that they appear in the storyboard. Another way to do that similarly is if you had a scene bin with only photos and you wanted everything inside your storyboard to go up there, you could click Action, mark Scene Bin, and add all marked, and then it's going to add every clip up there inside the storyboard. Okay? It's still processing my request because there's a lot of them, Chet. Okay, so you can see that I've added a lot of clips now to the storyboard. So I've added everything inside my scene bin to that storyboard. So let's go ahead and start again. Mark storyboard, remove, all marked, and it's going to wipe it clean for us here. Take a moment because it's actually having to, do a fair amount of processing to get all those data points outside of my storyboard. Now we start with a clean one. Now, another thing that a lot of us like to do, especially if we're building like a photo montage, is to take scenes and modify the length of those scenes. So these were brought in Photo Studio, and that's the best way if you want to bring in longer clips. If you're bringing in quick short video, still photos, you can do it right from the import menu. The challenge right now is it only brings it in up to a maximum of 3 seconds duration. But let's say I wanted to trim this down, so I'm going to go ahead. Also, keyboard shortcuts. By the way, Chet, how do I know where the keyboard shortcuts are? Well, I'll put a link to the article I have on my website that gives you a short keyboard shortcut guide you can print out. But also you have two different ones here. If you press function key F2 on your connected keyboard, it brings this up. It shows you the keyboard shortcut for every button on your menu screen. And this will change screen by screen. So again, that's the F2 key on your keyboard. Also, if you press function key F1, it brings up this. A list by name of the shortcuts that are available inside of each menu that you're in. So these are the shortcuts for the edit menu, and if I pop over transition menu, there's going to be a different set. So again, those two buttons, F1, function key F1 for the list, function key F2 for the on-screen display of the buttons. So see, T is for trim, T for trim, and you and me. So I press T, and then I press O for out. I could do out or in because it's a still photo, and then I can use the left and right cursor keys, or I can use the trackball. Let's come down here to make each photo 7 seconds and 7 frames long. Then I press enter or return twice. So you can see it's trimmed it down to 707, right? And the next scene is 30 seconds long. But if I want every scene to be 707, I can do that one of two ways. So I can simply press Control T, and it will trim the adjacent scene. I can just hold my finger down, it'll just rip through a bunch of scenes, right? The other thing I could do after I've trimmed it down, I could do Control R to repeat trim. Control R, then press R and say I want the next 8 scenes to have the same length, return, return, and you can see it trimmed each of the following 8 scenes down to 707. Except that one was only 8 frames long, so it's not going to make a 8-frame scene 7 seconds. Okay, so that's let's go ahead and add a bunch of scenes to the storyboard. Now here's another way I could do this. If I grouped scenes together, let's turn on the group function here, show the group. And let's call this one air. We're going to make a new group here as an airplane. Okay, so that's in the air group. And let's say I want this one to be in the air group. So I could say, yeah, I want that one to be in the air group. And I want this one to be in the air group. So this does take a bit of work to do this, but I just want you to know this is a feature you could use as well. So I'm selecting scenes in my scene bin and saying I want them to be part of a group of photos. In other words, like category. And then I could say, you know what? I want the system to only show me those scenes that are part of the air group. So just show me those scenes that are part of air, and it's those scenes, right? Now watch this. I can mark those scenes, but it's marking only the scenes that are visible to me. And now when I add those, it's going to say which ones. Just the active one? No, all the marked ones, and the first behind the other. And now I can come back to the opt or option button and group selection, show all the scenes in my scene bin. So it shows me all the scenes, but I've selected and added only those that are part of a particular group. Then I can come over here, and we used to have to go through keyboard keys to add transitions automatically. Now it's so easy, I believe, inside the scene bin. I like this a lot, is to come over to the options button here and add scenes automatically. You know me, I'm a diehard for the old crossfade or dissolve. And I click OK. Yeah, I want all these scenes to have a 1-second crossfade, and it adds them. Then I can go ahead and create or render that, and we have a short finished video montage all completed for me. Okay, so there's a walk through some of the functions of today's shortcuts in the Bogart OS, and much of what you saw today can be done on the Smart Edit OS as well, especially if you have the later version, Smart Edit 9, and you have the Power Key keyboard enabled also. All right, so I hope you found that useful. Go ahead and play with your system. And, you know, as you bounce around in each menu, especially those menus where you spend the most amount of time, remember the F2 key for the on-screen keyboard equivalents for power key, and F1, the function key F1 for the listing of those keyboard shortcuts. Casablanca expert Chet Davis saying, thanks for joining me on this and other of my Casablanca Chat with Chet.